What's going on, everybody? Josh here with Scrapyard Films, and today I'm going to show you how to get this lighting set up for under $100. So this all can be done for about $100 or less, depending on the availability of things on Amazon. I purchased all of this stuff off Amazon for dirt cheap, and it came in a couple days because of Prime. But if you wanted to save some bucks, you can probably leave out a couple of these objects. Now here's all the equipment we're going to be using in the video. We got 4 clamp lights. We have 4 light bulbs that go in those. We have 4 light stands. We have some diffusion socks or little filters that go over the clamp lights. We have some colored gels. A cell phone, which I'm going to be using my old Moto X4, which is a very cheap cell phone, probably worth about 50 bucks. But if you wanted to use a camera, you can do that as well. And then I also have something to hold my cell phone, a little clamp, and then some tape. So let's show you how to position everything and where everything goes. For this example, I cleared out my living room, but you could do this in any room. It all depends on, what you got going on for yourself. But you definitely want to plan out where you're going to be positioning things first. And we're going to start with wherever your camera is going to be placed. You're going to want to place your camera as far away from the back wall you're going to be recording at as possible. This creates the most depth of field, which is the blurry background, which makes it look a little more professional. So set up one of the tripods and place the camera on that. Next, place the seat in front of it. You'll want to turn on your camera and position yourself to where you're kind of looking like me right here, where you have a little bit of gap between the top of the frame and your head, and you're in the center. Now take the second tripod and place it directly behind you, which is going to be completely covered by your body. Don't extend it up all the way, just maybe about 2 feet or 3 feet. Next, take the third tripod, and this is going to be used for your key light. So you're going to put this at about 45-degree angle to your right or left, your call, and you're going to put it about 4 feet away from you or so. You'll want to start close because you could always move it back or tape things over to make it a little bit darker. Next, take the fourth tripod and put it in the opposite 45-degree angle that your key light was at. So if your key light's on the right, you want to go 45 degrees to your left, and that's going to be your fill light, so set up that tripod over there. Make sure that's about 8 feet away from you or so, but we're going to be wanting that fill light to be about 20 to 40% darker of a light shining on you than your key light. And once you're done, the placement of everything should be very similar to how I have it here. Next, screw in your 4 light bulbs into the 4 clamp lights. For these light bulbs, you want to make sure they're at least 5,000 to 5,600 Kelvin for temperature, because that's going to be as close to neutral as possible. Take 2 of the clamp lights and put them on the tripod behind you, pointing in different directions, maybe at about 45 degrees from each other. You're basically going to use each light to light up half of the back wall. Now take another clamp light and put it on the key light right in front of you, aiming down at you. You want it to be above your head by about a foot while it's aiming down at you, so it's going to create a nice dark shadow across your face. You also want to make sure to turn off your overhead light, because that's going to make this look a lot better. Now take your 4th clamp light and go ahead and put it on that back 4th tripod, your fill light tripod, and then aim that at you. Make sure it's a little bit far away. If it's too bright, you can start pointing it away from you or a little more down or something, just a little bit away from your head, just to darken it up a little bit to make it less bright. After that, see how it looks like on your camera. And now most likely it's going to be a little bit too harsh. So let's go ahead and add these sock diffusers over your clamp lights, because that's going to soften up the light and make the shadows less harsh and jagged, and it's going to make the shadows roll off a little bit better. And that'll look something like this. Now pick 2 colors of those gels, any one of them will do. I'm going to use blue and orange, and we're going to tape them over the clamp lights sitting behind you. And that's going to color the back wall, 2 separate colors. That definitely gives it some style and looks a lot nicer. Now your ultimate goal is for your key light to be about 70 IRE on your face. If you don't know what this means, it's basically a light scale from 0 to 100. You'll want your skin to be anywhere from 70 to 75. Any brighter, it's going to be looking a little too bright. Any darker, you're going to lose a little bit of detail. So that's a nice average you want to be at. Usually you can measure this on a waveform monitor, but if you don't have one of those, take some sample footage, go ahead and plop it into your editor, and then load up the waveform monitor on your editor, because most of them have one. You may need to do this a couple times to get your lighting just right, but if it's too bright on your face, you can move your light further away from you to darken it up, or you could tape more things over it, like sheets of paper or something like that that's cheap and that you may have lying around your house. You can even use black electric tape to tape the inside of the reflector of those clamp lights, and that will reduce the reflection and make it a little bit darker. But once you have your key light set to about 70 to 75 IRE, then you want to make sure your fill light is set to about 50 to 55 IRE on the right side, the darker side of your face. So you'll still want to brighten it up, but you'll want it to be about, 10 to 30% darker than your key light. And that's going to kind of provide a Rembrandt style, which is where your key light's aiming down at you, creating a dark shadow around your nose right here, while the right side of your face is still lit up a little bit. So again, your fill light can be anywhere from 50 to 55, even 60 to 65 IRE if you want that as well. But anything a little bit darker, it's going to be really harsh and dramatic, and if that's the look you want to go for it. But what I typically do, and what you're seeing right now, is about a 70 to 75 IRE and about a 60 to 65 IRE on this side. Once you're happy with your shot, go ahead and record something and then plop it into your editor, and we're going to go ahead and do some editing on this now. So now I'm going to show you some video editing tips that makes that footage look even better. My personal favorite video editor is Vegas Pro, but you can basically use anything you want. If you want something free, HitFilm Express is free, and you can try that out, but you'll eventually find something you like. So inside the editor, usually they have some sort of curves plugin. We're going to load that up and make a slight S curve, and this is going to make it a little more contrasty, a little more dramatic. It's going to crush the blacks a little bit and raise the highlights, kind of stretching it out, but you don't want to do this too much. Next, we're going to raise the shadows to just barely be above the 0 legal limit threshold in your waveform monitor. Anything below 0 is going to be loss of information, so we don't want to do that. We just want to basically be touching that 0 line. Next, we're going to lower the highlights so your key light and the temperature of your face is set to about 70 to 75 IRE. Most likely it's not going to be perfect, so that's why you adjust the highlights to make it perfect. Next, if your camera doesn't have any depth of field, which is a blurry background, like my cheap $50 phone I recorded on, we can artificially make this happen pretty easily. First, we'll want to duplicate our video, and on that top video, we're going to go ahead and add some blur. Any kind of blur will do, but I'm going to use the lens blur plugin from Ignite Express. Play around with it a bit, and you'll get a nice blurry background that you've artificially created. And then on the top layer, we're going to go ahead and mask out an oval of where we're going to be sitting talking. Then we can feather the edges a little bit too, so basically the top video is feeding into the bottom video. Next, we're going to go ahead and add a vignette. A vignette is basically a darkening or brightening of the edges or a specific area of your video. Typically, a vignette in movies darkens the corners, so that's what we're going to do. We can add a slight vignette, which makes your shot look a little bit more dramatic. Next, if you have a cheap phone like mine, it's not as sharp as a nice Google Pixel or something like that, so we can add some artificial sharpness. I like to add about anywhere from 10 to 20% sharpness to my shots because that really gives you some nice detail. You can over sharpen, so do not do that. I always stick to around 10 to 20%. And finally, most editors have a skin tone line, and this basically means is where you want your skin tone to line up on the color spectrum. On Vegas, the perfect skin tone line is 117 degrees, so if your skin tone is not on there, you can make slight adjustments to the color to push it in the correct direction and to land more on the skin tone line. This makes your video look a lot more natural and professional. And finally, for saturation is basically the strength of the color of your video. For your skin tone, you never really want to make it anywhere above 40 to 45%. That's kind of pushing it right there. So I like to keep my skin tones right at about the 40% mark, and that provides the most natural look for me. And once you're all done with all of this, your final product should look really awesome. And for about $100, give or take, depending on the market, and COVID kind of raised the price of everything, you can get a pretty awesome shot for free video editing software, 4 lights, 4 stands, a couple of little pieces of equipment, and then a cell phone. You can make a really nice YouTube studio that way. So if this video helped you out, be sure to shoot a like and subscribe, and I will see y'all later.